The Arizona desert in 1881 stretched like a vast, unyielding plain of red sand, its surface rippling under the merciless glare of a midday sun that turned the horizon into a shimmering mirage of heat and desolation. Mesa Flats, a remote trading post nestled between towering mesas and scattered creosote bushes, baked under a sky devoid of mercy, its cracked earth whispering tales of survival and sacrifice. Abigail Reed stood at the edge of the square, her elegant figure cloaked in a sun-faded dress of deep blue, its hem dusted with sand, her auburn hair tied back with a ribbon, her face a striking blend of beauty and sorrow, her green eyes carrying a quiet resilience honed by widowhood. At 38, she was a woman alone, her husband lost to a bandit raid 3 years prior, leaving her with a small ranch, a rifle, and a heart heavy with unhealed grief. She'd come to Mesa Flats to sell a few hides, her ranch struggling under drought and solitude, her hands calloused from tending the land alone. The trading post was a rare break from isolation, its bustle a stark contrast to her quiet life, its silence broken only by the creak of a windmill and the haggling of traders. As Abigail bartered with a grizzled merchant, a commotion drew her eye. A group of rough men, their faces shadowed by wide-brimmed hats, dragged a young man toward a makeshift auction block. He was slight, no older than 17, his blonde hair matted with dust, his tattered shirt hanging loosely over his emaciated frame, his blue eyes wide with fear and shame. His hands, bound with rope, trembled, and a sign around his neck read, "For sale virgin labor." The auctioneer's voice cut through the noise. Young Caleb, strong hands for work, sold to settle a debt $50. Abigail's stomach twisted. She'd heard of such auctions, youths sold into servitude by desperate families or ruthless traders, a practice that sickened her. This boy, Caleb, stirred a memory, her own son, lost to fever, a loss that had left her hollow. Against her better judgment, she raised a hand. $50, she said, her voice steady. The auctioneer grinned, pocketing the coin as the men shoved Caleb toward her. "He's yours, ma'am. Handle him well." Caleb's eyes met hers, a mix of gratitude and wariness, his trust a fragile thread. Abigail untied his ropes, her hands gentle but firm. "You're free to go," she said. "I just needed help, not a slave." Caleb rubbed his wrists, his voice hoarse. "Why buy me then?" Abigail met his gaze, her scar hidden beneath her sleeve from a fall prickling under the sun. "Lost my boy once. Can't leave you to that fate." Caleb's lips tightened, but he didn't run, the desert offering no safety for a lone youth, and her ranch, for all its hardship, a chance at redemption. They walked to her wagon, the crowd's murmurs fading. Abigail loaded her hides, Caleb carrying a sack with a strength that belied his thin frame. His tattered shirt, patched with rough stitches, rustled with each step, and a small pouch hung at his waist, its contents a mystery. "My ranch is a day's ride," Abigail said. "You can work or leave when you're ready." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "I stay for now, but I owe you nothing." Abigail nodded, respecting his pride, the journey beginning with an uneasy alliance. The trail wound through arid plains, the mesas of Mesa Flats receding into the haze, replaced by scattered sagebrush and the occasional skeletal cactus. Abigail's mind drifted to her past, a young wife with dreams, shattered by her husband's death and her son's fever, leaving her to toil alone. Caleb's presence was a disruption, but also a spark, his youth a mirror to her lost child. As dusk fell, they camped near a dry wash, the stars piercing the velvet sky. Abigail built a fire, its crackle a comfort against the night's chill. Caleb watched, his posture tense. "Why live alone?" he asked, his voice low. Abigail poked the fire, her face shadowed. "Lost my husband to outlaws, my boy to fever. Couldn't face the world after." Caleb's eyes softened, a flicker of understanding. "I lost my folks to debt, sold to pay it off." The words hung between them, a bridge of shared pain, but their peace was short-lived. Hoofbeats echoed in the distance, growing louder. Abigail grabbed her rifle, Caleb rising with a stick. Shadows loomed, 3 riders, their coats dusted with sand, their hats marked with the brand of Silas Kane, a trader known for his ruthlessness. The leader, a burly man with a scarred cheek, dismounted. "Reed," he barked. "That boy's ours. Kane wants him back." Abigail's jaw tightened. Kane's greed had fueled such auctions, and now he claimed Caleb as property. "He's free," she said, her rifle steady. "Ride off, or we fight." The man laughed, drawing a pistol. "You're outnumbered, widow." Caleb moved like a shadow, his stick striking the man's hand, disarming him. Abigail fired, her shot grazing another rider's shoulder, sending them scattering. The third fled, shouting threats. "Cain'll burn you out." Abigail lowered her rifle, her heart pounding. Caleb's eyes met hers, a flicker of respect breaking through. "You didn't have to," he said. Abigail wiped sweat from her brow, her scar itching. "Ain't right, what they did. I've got my own regrets." They settled in, Caleb's gratitude, a quiet bond. Abigail offered him a blanket. "Rest," she said. "We'll figure this out." The desert stretched vast, its silence a promise of more trials. But Abigail's act of mercy had ignited a spark, a family forged in dust and danger. With Cain's wrath looming on the horizon, the Arizona desert unfolded like a relentless sea of red sand. As Abigail Reed and Caleb ventured away from Mesa Flats, the sun sinking low to cast long shadows across the arid expanse. Abigail guided her wagon with steady hands, her sun-faded dress of deep blue dusted with the day's toil, her auburn hair tied back with a ribbon, her face a striking blend of beauty and determination, her green eyes scanning the horizon with a mix of resolve and unease. Her rifle rested across her lap, a constant companion since the skirmish with Silas Cain's men, her scar hidden beneath her sleeve prickling with the memory of past loss. Caleb walked beside the wagon, his tattered shirt patched with rough stitches, his worn boots scuffing the sand, his small pouch swaying at his waist, his blue eyes wide with a fragile hope. The beaded cord from Abigail gleamed on his wrist, a symbol of the uneasy alliance that had formed in the wake of her rescue, the journey a testament to their fledgling bond. They headed toward Abigail's ranch near Dry Creek, a day's ride where she hoped to offer Caleb safety and a chance at a new life. Abigail carried a sack of hides and a half-filled canteen. Her widowhood paused for this new purpose, the heat seeping into her bones like a persistent foe. Caleb's presence stirred a compassion in Abigail she'd buried since her husband and son's deaths. His gratitude a mirror to her loneliness, his warning of Cain, a shadow over her mercy. "We need to reach the creek by nightfall," Abigail said, her voice rough from the dry air. Caleb nodded, his gaze steady. "The ranch hides us if we're quick," he replied, his youthful strength guiding them through the wasteland. His silence, broken only by soft breaths, hinted at a shame he couldn't voice. The trauma of his sail, a burden he carried alone. The journey was grueling, the wagon's wheels grinding against the rocky trail, the heat a constant adversary, the silence broken only by the creak of wood and the occasional rustle of a desert lizard. Abigail's mind churned with the previous day's events, her impulsive purchase of Caleb, the attack by Cain's men, the threat that now shadowed her. She'd bought him to ease her own guilt, but his presence drew danger, a price she hadn't foreseen. She offered Caleb water, a gesture of goodwill, her hand trembling slightly. Caleb accepted, his eyes narrowing. "Why risk this?" he asked, his voice weak. Abigail met his gaze, her scar itching under the sun. "Lost my husband and boy once. Can't leave you to that fate." Caleb's expression softened, but suspicion lingered, a reflection of a life shaped by betrayal and despair. The trail wound through arid plains, the mesas of Mesa Flats receding into the haze, replaced by scattered sagebrush and the occasional skeletal cactus. Abigail's thoughts drifted to her past, a young wife with dreams, shattered by her husband's death to outlaws and her son's fever, leaving her to toil alone. Caleb's youth was a mirror to her lost child, his resilience a challenge to her solitude. As dusk fell, they camped near a dry wash, the stars piercing the velvet sky. Abigail built a fire, its crackle a comfort against the night's chill. Caleb watched, his posture tense. "Why live alone?" he asked, his voice low. Abigail poked the fire, her face shadowed. "Lost my family to violence and sickness. Couldn't face the world after." Caleb's eyes softened, a flicker of understanding. "I lost my folks to debt, sold to pay it off." The words hung between them, a bridge of shared pain, but their peace was short-lived. Hoofbeats echoed in the distance, growing louder. Abigail grabbed her rifle, Caleb rising with a stick. Shadows loomed, 3 riders, their coats dusted with sand, their hats marked with Cain's gang insignia. The leader, a burly man with a scarred cheek, dismounted. "Reed," he barked. "That boy's ours. Cain wants him back." Abigail's jaw tightened. Cain's greed had fueled such auctions, and now he claimed Caleb as property. "He's free," she said, her rifle steady. "Ride off or we fight." The man laughed, drawing a pistol. "You're outnumbered, widow." Caleb moved like a shadow, his stick striking the man's hand, disarming him. Abigail fired, her shot grazing another rider's shoulder, sending them scattering. The third fled, shouting threats. "Cain'll burn you out." Abigail lowered her rifle, her heart pounding. Caleb's eyes met hers, a flicker of respect breaking through. "You didn't have to," he said. Abigail wiped sweat from her brow, her scar itching. "Ain't right, what they did. I've got my own ghosts." They settled in, Caleb's gratitude a quiet bond. Abigail offered him a blanket. "Rest," she said. "We'll figure this out." The desert stretched vast, its silence a promise of more trials. But Abigail's act of mercy had ignited a spark, a family forged in dust and danger, with Cain's wrath looming on the horizon. The Arizona desert sprawled like an unyielding inferno of red sand, its surface shimmering under the relentless glare of a midday sun that turned the air into a furnace of heat and dust. Abigail, Reed, and Caleb pressed onward, the wagon creaking behind Abigail's steady hands, the chestnut mare straining through the shifting dunes with a weary gait. Abigail's sun-faded dress of deep blue was soaked with sweat, her auburn hair clinging to her neck, her rifle resting across her lap, her face a striking blend of beauty and determination, her green eyes scanning the horizon with a mix of resolve and exhaustion. Her scar, hidden beneath her sleeve, prickled with the memory of past loss. Caleb walked beside the wagon, his tattered shirt patched with rough stitches, his worn boots scuffing the sand, his small pouch swaying at his waist, his blue eyes wide with a fragile hope tempered by fear. The beaded cord from Abigail gleamed on his wrist, a symbol of the uneasy alliance that had formed in the desert's grip, the journey a testament to their growing bond. The ranch near Dry Creek, their destination, was a half-day's ride. But the desert had other trials to test their mettle. Their water was nearly gone. The canteen they'd salvaged from Mesa Flats reduced to a few tepid drops. Their supplies dwindled to a single strip of jerky and a handful of desert figs Caleb had spotted. The sun beat down, its heat a relentless adversary. The silence broken only by the rasp of their breathing, the creak of the wagon, and the distant call of a buzzard circling overhead. Abigail's mind wrestled with her past her husband's death to outlaws, her son's loss to fever, a guilt that shadowed her every step. Caleb's presence, a mirror to her loneliness, stirred a compassion she'd buried, his resilience a challenge to her solitude. "We need to find shade soon," Abigail said, her voice hoarse from the dry air. Caleb nodded, pointing to a faint shadow on the horizon. "There's a dry wash ahead. Might hold water," he replied, his youthful strength guiding them through the wasteland. His silence, broken only by soft gasps, hinted at a shame he couldn't voice, the trauma of his sail a burden he carried alone. They reached the dry wash as the sun peaked, its shade a fleeting mercy against the scorching heat. Abigail checked the wagon, its wheels wobbling from the rough terrain, while Caleb scouted for signs of life, his movements quick despite his exhaustion. The wash offered a shallow pool, its water brackish but drinkable, a rare oasis in the desert's grip. Abigail filled the canteen, offering it to Caleb first, her hands trembling slightly. "Drink, lad," she said, the word warm with care. Caleb accepted, his eyes softening. "Thank you, Abigail," he murmured, a rare smile breaking through his fatigue. The moment was brief, but it deepened their bond, a thread of trust weaving through their shared struggle. The desert's fire struck at noon. A sandstorm brewed on the horizon, a roiling wall of red dust that swallowed the sky, its roar a challenge to their endurance. "Get down," Abigail shouted, pulling Caleb and the wagon behind a boulder. The storm hit like a living entity, its force tearing at their clothes, dust clogging their throats and stinging their eyes. Abigail shielded Caleb with her body, the tempest raging for hours, leaving them buried in drifts, their water spilled into the sand. As it passed, the desert revealed a new peril, a scorpion, its stinger raised near Caleb's hand. Abigail reacted instantly, her boot crushing it, the crunch a stark sound in the silence. Caleb's eyes widened, but he didn't flinch. "You're quick," he said, his voice steady. Abigail nodded, her respect for him growing. "You're tougher than you look," she replied. That night, they camped in the wash's lee, a small fire their only warmth, its glow casting shadows on the rocky walls. The storm had delayed them, the ranch still a half-day away, and Abigail's mind churned with guilt, her husband's murder, her son's death, now this boy's fight. Caleb offered her a fig, his hands deft. "You fight for me," he said. "Why?" Abigail poked the fire, her face shadowed. "I turned away from trouble once my family paid for it. Can't do that again." Caleb's eyes softened, his pain surfacing. "Traders sold me after my folks died. Cain bought me cheap." The confession hung heavy, a mirror to Abigail's regrets. "Strength ain't just in freedom," she said. "It's in standing together." Mika leaned against her, his voice small. Cain wanted me for labor. I ran in my head. Abigail's heart ached, her losses echoing his. I lost my husband to outlaws, my boy to fever. Drifted since. Caleb's gaze met hers, a warmth breaking through. We're both broken then. Maybe we fix each other. Their talk was interrupted by a rustle. Figures emerged from the dusk, led by a wiry man with a painted face. I am Tala, a friend of the lost, he said, his voice cautious. We saw the storm. Cain hunts you. He offered a waterskin, his eyes on Caleb. You're alive, boy. We thought you taken. Caleb's face lit with relief. Abigail saved me. Tala nodded, offering her a beaded bracelet. You're kin now, widow. The reunion was brief, but heartfelt. Tala's band, 5 strong, joined them, their spears glinting. Cain's tracker, Rafe, is near, Tala warned. He won't stop. Abigail's heart steadied, her bond with Caleb a shield. We fight together, she said. Caleb's hand found hers, his trust a beacon. You're my mother, he whispered. The words warmed her, a redemption she hadn't sought. The peace shattered at dawn. Hoofbeats echoed. Rafe and 6 riders, their rifles ready. Tala's men melted into the rocks, leaving Abigail and Caleb exposed. Run, Tala whispered, but Abigail stood firm, her rifle raised. Rafe's voice cut through the heat. Give up the boy, Reed, or die. Abigail fired, her shot grazing a rider, but an arrow struck her arm, drawing a cry. Caleb shielded her, his stick striking a warrior, while Tala's men felled 2, forcing Rafe to retreat. They bandaged Abigail's arm, Caleb's hands gentle. You're my strength, he said. Abigail smiled, a rare light in her eyes. And you're mine, Caleb. The desert tested them, its trials forging a bond, but Cain's wrath loomed larger, a storm they'd faced together. The ranch was near, but so was their reckoning. Dry Hollow loomed like a scarred wound across the Arizona desert, its rocky canyon of red sandstone and jagged outcrops standing defiant against the encroaching dusk. The sun dipped low, casting a fiery glow across the hollow's rim, the air thick with the scent of sun-scorched earth and the faint promise of a cooling night breeze. Abigail, Reed, Caleb, and the band led by Tala prepared for their stand, the tension palpable in the stillness. Abigail's sun-faded dress of deep blue was torn at the hem, her worn boots caked with dust and blood from her grazed arm, her rifle steady despite the ache in her muscles. Her face, a striking blend of beauty and determination, bore a grim resolve, her green eyes shadowed by the weight of her past, her scar hidden beneath her sleeve prickling with the memory of loss. Caleb walked beside her, his tattered shirt patched with rough stitches, his worn boots scuffing the sand, his small pouch swaying at his waist, his blue eyes wide with a fragile hope tempered by fear. The beaded bracelet from Abigail gleamed on his wrist, a symbol of the kinship that had drawn them into this fight. Silas Cain, the traitor who had sought to enslave Caleb, was coming, his greed for profit and power driving a force that threatened to end their journey. The hollow offered strategic ground-steep drops for ambushes, rocky outcrops for cover, and a narrow pass for traps. Abigail fortified a vantage point with Tala's men, her hands calloused from years of ranching, now skilled in war. Caleb rigged tripwires with twine, his movements precise despite his exhaustion, his knife glinting in the fading light. Eli, a young member of Tala's band, assisted, his eyes sharp with the instinct of survival. Cain wants me back, Caleb said, his voice low and strained. He'll kill for it. Abigail nodded, her guilt over past inaction fueling her resolve. We hold him here, she replied. Eli handed her a sharpened stake, a silent pledge of unity, the weapon's weight a comfort in her hands. Tala distributed spears and arrows, his face painted with earth tones, his warriors blending into the hollow's shadows. Rafe leads them, he warned. He's close. Abigail's heart steadied, her bond with Caleb a shield against the encroaching dark. We fight as family, she said. Caleb's eyes met hers, a flicker of trust breaking through his pain. You're my mother, he said, his words a balm to her wounded spirit. The sentiment lingered, a redemption she hadn't dared hope for, as the wind carried the distant sound of approaching hooves. As dusk deepened, the air grew taut with anticipation, the hollow's silence broken by the crunch of boots on gravel. Silas Cain rode in with a dozen men, Rafe at his side, the tracker's scar-faced grin a harbinger of violence. Cain, a broad man in a black coat lined with stolen pelts, dismounted and called out, his voice a thunderclap against the cliffs. Reed, hand over the boy, or this hollow becomes your grave. Abigail stepped forward, her rifle raised, her voice firm despite the heat. You'll have to take him over my dead body, Cain, she shouted, her breath visible in the cooling air. The clash erupted like a desert tempest. Kane's men charged, their rifles and revolvers spitting fire through the dusk. Abigail's first shot dropped a rider, the bullet finding its mark with a precision honed by years on the ranch. Tala's warriors struck from the shadows, their spears felling two more, their movements silent and deadly. Caleb triggered a tripwire, a dynamite cache salvaged from an old settler's stockpile exploding and sending a shower of sand and rock, scattering the attackers. But Kane's numbers were overwhelming, and Rafe's rifle was a relentless predator, his bullet grazing Abigail's side, drawing a sharp hiss of pain. Caleb pulled her behind a boulder, his arm wound seeping anew. "Stay alive," he growled, loosing a knife that struck a man's leg, his aim unwavering despite his fatigue. The hollow became a battlefield, its echoes ringing with gunfire and the thud of falling bodies. Abigail fired again, dropping another rider, the heat numbing her hands but not her resolve. Tala's warriors fought with primal fury, their spears piercing the fray, while Eli and other young warriors lobbed rocks, their small forms a surprising force. But Kane's voice cut through the chaos. "Caleb, tell me who bought you, or they all die." He held a pistol to Tala's head, the warrior's spear shattered, his eyes defiant. Caleb's heart sank, his pouch clutched tight. "No," he cried, his voice raw with emotion. Abigail's mind raced, she couldn't lose another son. She signaled Tala's men to hold, her gaze locking with Caleb's, a silent plea for a plan. Caleb stepped forward, his stance defiant despite his wounds. "Kane betrayed my family," he shouted, his voice carrying over the wind. "He forced my father into debt, sold me when he couldn't pay." The revelation hit Abigail like a thunderclap. Kane's greed wasn't just for profit, but for control. His betrayal of Caleb's family, a secret that fueled his vendetta. Kane laughed, his pistol steady. "Then you all die with your lies." But Abigail moved, shoving Caleb aside as Rafe fired, the bullet tearing through her chest. She fell, blood pooling in the dust, her rifle slipping from her grasp, her sacrifice a shield for him. "Caleb, no!" he roared, lunging to her side, his hands trembling as he pressed against the wound. Tala's warriors charged, their spears a blur, felling 3 men in a surge of vengeance. Eli struck with a rock, stunning a rider, while Caleb threw his pouch, distracting another. Abigail tackled Rafe, their struggle a tangle of fists and sand, until her strength faded, her vision blurring. Caleb's knife flashed, the blade piercing Rafe's heart, ending the tracker's threat. Kane roared, charging with his pistol, but Tala's spear found his leg, bringing him down. The remaining outlaws fled, their horses vanishing into the dusk. Abigail lay back, her breath shallow, blood soaking her dress. Caleb knelt beside her, tears streaming down his face. "Mother, no!" he cried. Abigail's hand found his, her voice weak. "You're free, Caleb. Lead with my strength." Her eyes met Tala's, a silent plea. "Take him home." Tala nodded, lifting her gently. "You're one of us," he said. The hollow fell silent, the air heavy with dust and sacrifice. Kane was defeated, his men scattered. But Abigail's loss was a wound deeper than the heat. Caleb cradled her, his grief, a mirror to her past pain. Eli approached, placing a feather on her chest. "She was our hope," he said. "Now she's with the spirits." The Apache carried her to a pyre, their chants rising, a tribute to her courage that echoed through the hollow. Caleb stood, his guilt eased by her words, his promise to honor her a new purpose. The hollow smoldered, the air heavy with loss and victory. Tala offered Caleb a place with the tribe, and he nodded. "I'll honor her at the ranch," he said, his voice steady. The journey to Dry Hollow had broken Kane's grip, but Abigail's sacrifice would resonate in the desert silence. Caleb's redemption was hers, and her legacy, his freedom, would live on. The dawn broke over Dry Hollow, a fragile light spilling across the red sands, where the embers of Abigail's pyre glowed like the last whispers of a fading hope. The air was thick with the lingering scent of smoke, and the dry, earthy aroma of the desert, the vast Arizona wilderness reclaiming the battlefield with a quiet, unyielding peace. Caleb stood at the hollow's edge, his tattered shirt torn and dusted with ash, his worn boots planted firmly in the sand, his small pouch and knife resting against a rock. His face, young but hardened by hardship, bore the weight of grief, his blue eyes glistening with unshed tears, the guilt of his past softened by Abigail's final words. The beaded bracelet from Abigail encircled his wrist, a symbol of the kinship that had brought him to this moment. Silas Kane, bound and defeated, slumped against a boulder, his traitor's empire shattered, his greed no match for the courage of a widow and a youth. Tala, the Apache leader, flanked him, his spear lowered, his painted face etched with both loss and pride, while Eli, a young warrior, stood nearby, his dark eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and hope. The Apache warriors, led by Tala, moved with a solemn reverence, their faces mirroring the canyon's crimson hues as they gathered around Abigail's pyre. The flames had dwindled to a gentle glow, the sand around it darkened by melted wax and ash, a testament to her sacrifice. Tala knelt, offering a prayer in Apache, his voice a deep chant that reverberated through the cliffs, honoring a woman who had transcended her role as a protector and mother. Caleb watched, his hands trembling as he placed her rifle once her shield onto the pyre, a silent vow to carry her legacy forward. Eli joined him, adding a handful of desert sage, its aroma mingling with the smoke. "She saved us," Eli said, his voice soft but resolute. "You kept her spirit alive." Caleb nodded, the words a balm to his wounded soul, a redemption he hadn't dared to claim. The journey to the hidden ranch began, the warriors carrying the pyre's remnants through the hollow's rocky pass, its ashes a sacred burden. The trail was treacherous, the sand shifting underfoot, the heat of the day giving way to a cooling breeze that carried the promise of renewal. Caleb walked with them, his arm aching from the graze, but his spirit lifted by their unity. The ranch emerged, a sheltered valley nestled between towering mesas, its floor dotted with mesquite and a faint shimmer of a spring fed by an underground stream, a place Abigail had once called home. The Apache survivors greeted them, their faces etched with grief for Abigail but warmth for her savior. Tala led Caleb to the spring, its waters clear and life-giving, reflecting the cavern walls adorned with painted symbols and woven mats, a sanctuary Abigail had died to protect. "Her spirit guards this place," Tala said. "You are kin." The tribe gathered around a fire that night, the valley's walls amplifying their voices as they shared tales of Abigail's bravery. Her gifts to Caleb, her trust, her rifle were now symbols of her legacy, their weight heavier than the freedom she'd secured. They offered him a place among them, their eyes reflecting gratitude and hope. "You fought for her," Tala said, handing him a woven mat. "Stay and find peace." Caleb hesitated, his mind drifting to his past. A youth sold into servitude, his family ruined by debt, his years of shame a chain he'd dragged through the desert. Abigail's words, "You're my son," echoed, her sacrifice a key to unlock that prison. "I'll stay," he said finally, "but I'll bring my strength to your valley, with your help." The days that followed were a blend of mourning and rebuilding. The Apache taught Caleb their ways, how to channel the spring's water for crops, how to weave mats from agave, how to honor the land with rituals. Eli became his companion, the boy's knowledge of the desert complementing Caleb's ranching skills. They constructed a small adobe home near the spring, its walls rising under their hands, a fusion of Apache resilience and Caleb's craftsmanship. The desert, once a place of solitude, became a bridge between worlds, its silence broken by the tribe's laughter and the trickle of water. One evening, as the sun set, painting the valley in shades of orange and purple, Caleb stood at the spring's edge, the beaded bracelet a constant reminder. Eli joined him, holding a new knife carved by the tribe. "For you," the boy said. "Abigail would want it." Caleb took it, his eyes misting as he traced its edge. "She gave me more than I deserved," he said. Eli smiled, a rare light in his young face. "She gave us a home." The sentiment lingered, a bond forged in the crucible of the desert. The tribe celebrated with a feast, their songs filling the valley, Abigail's name woven into the melodies. Caleb learned her story in full, how she'd lost her husband and son, how she'd fought to protect him from Cain, how her spirit now watched over them. His past, his family's ruin, his years of servitude faded against her forgiveness. He wasn't just a sold youth anymore, but a guardian, a son to those he'd once failed. Tala approached, offering a carved wooden box. "Lead with her courage," he said. Caleb took it, his hand steady. "I will." Weeks later, the valley thrived, its spring nourishing new crops, its people strengthened by Caleb's aid. He rebuilt his life, the Apache's help a lifeline, their stories a balm to his loneliness. Abigail's rifle hung above the home's door, a shrine to her sacrifice, its barrel a silent witness. The desert stretched vast, its red sands a testament to their fight, but it was no longer a place of solitude. Caleb's redemption was complete, not in land, but in the family he'd found: Eli, Tala, the tribe, all bound by Abigail's legacy. As the sun rose over Dry Hollow, its golden light bathed the valley, a promise of a new beginning. Caleb stood at the home's threshold, the wooden box at his side, the beaded bracelet gleaming. He was no longer just a boy who'd been sold, but a son to a widow whose courage had saved him, whose redemption had turned peril into a legacy of strength. The desert whispered her name, and Caleb carried it forward, a new family born from the ashes of sacrifice.